Hey, welcome back to my channel. We are today going to talk about Hamlet Act 1, Scene 5. So this is the first scene where there's any actual spoiler, so if you really don't know anything about Hamlet and you haven't read or watched the scene beforehand, as I advised you to do, this is your official warning. Spoilers are ahead. I also wanted to say thank you for your patience. I know that I did not post a video in this series for the last couple weeks. The reason for that is that I was on a trip to London and Paris, so I was able to go to the Globe and I picked up some Hamlet related goodies like that and like that. How cool are these? So I'll tell you more about that trip later on, but anyway, thank you for sticking with me today. Act 1, Scene 5, the big one with Hamlet and the ghost. Here we go. Alright, so it starts in another part of the platform. Hamlet has run off after his father's ghost to speak to him alone, despite all of the advice that Horatio and the guards were giving him. Remember, the ghost is played by Shakespeare himself in the original Hamlet, so just keep that in your mind as we are going through here. So the ghost says, and I have my trusty book here, the ghost says, "My hour is almost come, when I to sulphurous and tormenting flames must render up myself." Now here's my first question of Act 1, Scene 5. I know a lot of this has been questions and not all of it has been answers, but here's a serious question. In most of the evidence in the book, Hamlet's father's ghost is in purgatory. He is not in hell. But sulphurous and tormenting flames, that sounds kind of hellish to me. But anyway, he explains after that he needs to fast in fires until the foul crimes that he has done are purged away. It just sounds like a really unpleasant place. The belief at this time was that you had to have your last rites if you were going to have your soul purged in preparation for heaven, and we find that he did not get that opportunity. "If thou didst ever thy dear father love," he continues, "revenge his foul and most unnatural murder." Dun dun dun! Spoilers! So he wasn't just killed in a freak accident, he was actually murdered. Now, as I was going through Hamlet this last time, I noticed that not only does Hamlet later on say, "Oh, my prophetic soul, I knew it, I had the sense that that was the case." In Act 1, Scene 2, he says, "I doubt some foul play. These foul deeds will make themselves known." At that point, nobody's talked about foul deeds, but I think he suspected that there was something up, something awry. Just as an extra bonus, if you look at the ghost's first significant speech portion right there, he talks about how he can't explain what it's like in purgatory because it would freak Hamlet out too much. It's too much for him. His hair would stand on end like the fearful porcupine is how that's normally said in the different versions. But some versions say porpentine, which is hilarious. So if you want an old word for porcupine, porpentine is the word for you. But anyway, more seriously, the ghost famously says, "Yes, I've been murdered. Murder most foul." Cue chicken joke. Hamlet says, "Okay, tell me about it. Haste me to know it, that I with wings as swift as meditation of the thoughts of love may sweep to my revenge." There are cartoons about how that is kind of hilarious considering the way that Hamlet goes about actually revenging his father's murder. So that's the ghost's first request of him. You have to avenge my murder. You have to avenge me by taking out the murderer. And the ghost seems to believe that Hamlet is capable of doing this, which is cool, but fairly untrue. He says, "I find thee apt, and duller shouldst thou be than the fat weed that roots itself in ease on Leith Wharf, would thou not stir in this." Now, Leith is the river of forgetfulness, so you would have to be ridiculously forgetful, like the fat weed that draws from the spring of forgetfulness, the river of forgetfulness, if you didn't follow what I'm saying. Now, just an interesting tidbit looking ahead to the end of the play. I'm not going to say exactly what happens at the end of the play in case you haven't read that far or you haven't watched that far yet, But the only other time when Hamlet is referred to as potentially fat in any way it's not about his size necessarily, it's talking about something else. But the only other time that that word is used that I can think of, and I'm pretty sure I'm right, is at the very end of the play. So was he unsuccessful? Was he as bad as his father says he would have to be not to follow through on this? Just a thought. So, dun dun dun, the reveal of the murderer, and it is, of course, Claudius, the brother of King Hamlet, who killed him. Now, the story goes that Hamlet Sr. was killed by a serpent. He was bitten by a snake, and so then he died suddenly, just in this freak accident. Of course, he was poisoned instead by Claudius. If CSI had existed at this time, it would have saved everyone a lot of grief. You know, just look for the snake bite wound. Do you see any? No? No? Totally inconsistent, weird, scaly skin compared to a snake bite? Yes? Okay, well then something else was going on, but apparently they couldn't figure that out. So Hamlet is shocked when he hears the serpent that did sting his father's life now wears his crown. Hamlet's freaking out. And the ghost replies, "Aye, yes, that incestuous, that adulterate beast." And he goes on about how Claudius killed him and then stole his wife. Now, just a sidebar. I am a fan of conspiracy theories that actually have some evidence. I'm not just into every conspiracy theory that comes my way, like the idea that Gertrude was involved. I don't really see a lot of evidence for that. But here, the idea that the ghost might actually be a demon or some figment of Hamlet's imagination has a little bit of weight, at least in the way that the ghost is speaking to him. Because why would the ghost focus on Claudius's incestuousness, his adulterate behavior, and not as much on the murdering aspect of things? I don't know. Think back to Act 1, Scene 2, Hamlet's first soliloquy. What was he upset about? Not so much that Claudius came in and took the crown. No. It was that Claudius came in and took his mom. And we see the same thing with the ghost. It might just be a like father, like son kind of situation there. Again, some food for thought. Is it a demon? Is he just a lot like his dad? I don't know. So he goes on about that for a while, but he gets to the cuts to the chase about halfway through his speech, that is the ghost's, and he explains exactly how he was killed, which was as he was sleeping in his orchard. Claudius came and poured some cursed hebona in his ear, which, as this comic from 1969 explains, is a poisonous weed. The idea of poison being poured into ears is not only in Hamlet, it's in Macbeth as well, it's in a few others, and so I think that there's more to it than just a random way to poison somebody. It seems like a weird way. So what does it have to do with the story? I think it has to do with the words that you listen to as well, and what goes into your mind. Kenneth Branagh does something really interesting with this. Not only in the flashback scenes that he shows while the ghost is explaining all of this, but also in Act 3, Scene 3 in Branagh's version of the movie, when he has the opportunity to kill Claudius, and I'm not going to explain that whole scene because, again, if you haven't seen it, I hate spoilers. But when he has the opportunity to kill Claudius, in that particular version, Claudius and Hamlet are situated so that Hamlet could put a dagger through the ear of Claudius, which is dark and creepy and kind of gross when I watched it the first time, but there's something about the ear. So the ghost got all crusty and disgusting, and he gives too much information about how he died. I don't think Hamlet wants all that, but it just stokes that fire of revenge within him. And then the ghost has to leave, and he says, "Adieu, adieu, adieu, remember me." At first I thought, well, he's just saying goodbye, but this year, and this is one of the things I love about Hamlet, I'm always finding new stuff. This year, when I realized he said adieu, adieu is the final goodbye. Au revoir, which is poorly pronounced, sorry French people out there, is I'll see you later. It's a much less formal kind of goodbye. So is he saying that he will never show up again? Perhaps so. If that's the case, the interpretation of some later scenes gets really interesting. Then Hamlet is left alone and he has a baby soliloquy. I don't count it as one of the main soliloquies, but Hamlet freaking out and he starts saying, okay, I'm going to get rid of everything that I've ever known, everything that I've ever thought about, anything that takes up space in my mind. It's a lot like Sherlock Holmes' theory of getting rid of stuff so that he can make room for the important things. He says, I'm going to forget everything that I've learned. The only thing that will live in my memory is what you have told me and the instructions that you've given me, which are two. There is to avenge his father's murder, and two, the ghost also says right before he leaves that he needs to leave his mother alone. Those are the two things. Very simple. Basically, kill Claudius. Don't hurt your mother. He fails on both counts pretty miserably throughout at least most of the play. But again, I don't want to be filled with spoilers, so you will hopefully continue reading or watching. In that baby soliloquy, he also says, here, my tables, give me something to write on. Meet it is, so fitting it is, that's just what meet means as an adjective. Fitting it is, I set it down, that one may smile and be a villain. At least I'm sure it may be so in Denmark. So uncle, there you are. Now to my word. It is a Jew, remember me, I have sworn it. So he recaps everything that his father has said. He says, I'm going to remember this word for word. This is the only thing I'm going to think about. But I find it interesting that he decides to make a note about how people can be villains and still appear not to be villains. This seems like pretty basic knowledge. Anybody who's lived in the world for a decent amount of time knows that not everybody is what they seem, that those people who sometimes smile at you are not always pure of heart. And Hamlet seems to be realizing this for the first time in a major way as everybody is betraying him and leaving him and even dying off as his father is. It's moments like this and some of the attitudes that Hamlet has that I think make people believe or picture Hamlet as a teenager, kind of the drama kid, typical drama kid looking guy who's all morose and wears black all the time. But that's not who Hamlet is. Hamlet's a 30-year-old man. Yes, he was off at university when he had to come back for his father's funeral, but he's an older guy, and yet, in many ways, this is a coming-of-age story, because he's realizing these fundamental things about life, like the fact that people can be terrible and still smile at in your face. Enter Horatio and Marcellus. People that we love, at least Horatio. Marcellus I don't have as strong feeling about. And Hamlet here acts sort of nuts with them. I'm not sure why exactly he's doing that unless he wants to begin the first step of his plan immediately, which is to pretend to be insane. We'll get to that in a second. Horatio, bless him, love you Horatio, calls Hamlet out, as he ought to do more often, but he at least is the only one who really does this. And he says, these are but wild and whirling words, my lord. The things that you are saying do not make sense. We want to help you, and clearly something has gone wrong. Hamlet says, I'm sorry they offend you. To which Horatio responds, there's no offense, my lord. I didn't mean to upset you or anything, but I'm just letting you know, you're being a weirdo. And then Hamlet responds, yes, by St. Patrick, but there is offense, Horatio, and much offense too. He's talking about his father and the murder, of course, but something that I had not realized until super recently, another new revelation, thank you Shakespeare, is that he says, yes, by St. Patrick, but there is. I think of St. Patrick, I think of St. Patrick's Day, I think of the Irish people, and, a pint and some corned beef and that sort of thing. But what I did not realize was that St. Patrick is actually traditionally, by some sources, said to be the keeper of purgatory. By St. Patrick, but there is. So St. Patrick knows what's up, that Hamlet Sr. is stuck in purgatory when he shouldn't be. There's the offense. He was killed, and he's in an afterlife that he did not deserve. St. Patrick, who knew? Love these revelations. Hopefully you are too. There's a lot of good stuff that comes after this, but I'm going to cut to the chase. There is a very dramatic moment when Hamlet says, "You two, Horatio and Marcellus, you cannot tell anyone what you have seen. You cannot tell anybody about the ghost or the weird way that I'm acting or anything that I'm telling you at this very moment. You have to swear." And he's trying to get them to swear, and then, dramatically, the ghost says, "Swear," from beneath the stage. I love it. I'm going to quickly show you a picture of the Globe stage as it is in the reconstructed Globe Theater, so you can get an idea of the space where everybody would have been standing, and then there's a trapdoor where Shakespeare himself, in the first version of this play, first production, would have been underneath the stage saying "swear" in a creepy ghost voice. This could have been a really creepy, dramatic moment, and it is, in a lot of ways, but I love how Shakespeare brings in some of this humor. There's one point right after the ghost says "swear" one of the times, "swear." Hamlet says, "Well said, old mole. Canst work in the earth so fast?" So he's talking about how the sound kind of moves around. Old mole, that's hilarious. Some of the best works of literature and movies do this as well. Throw in some humor at just the right moment when things start getting really, really dark. And Shakespeare is no exception. Hamlet gets really, really dark. It gets so much darker than this. And right about at the time when you're thinking, "Oh my gosh, I feel like I just have a bunch of bricks weighing me down," he'll throw in something like that. Does everybody want to go get shawarma? That kind of thing. Love it. One of my favorite lines in Hamlet, and there are lots of them, but I really like this one, is in this scene at the end. Hamlet says, "There are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of in your philosophy." So good. I think about this quotation, not constantly. I'm kind of obsessed with this play, but I'm hopefully not a weirdo. But it does come to mind when I think about those unknowable aspects of life. I mean, even life on other planets. Do I think that life on other planets exists? I don't know. The universe is a huge thing. Maybe not. But there are more things in heaven and earth than are dreamt of in my philosophy. And there's some excitement in that. Just knowing that there is more out there than I'm aware of. I mean, I have my beliefs. I have things that I believe in and don't believe in. Absolutely. But I think it's good for us, especially in our Western culture, to open our minds a little bit, not infinitely, that's a black hole of nonsense, but just to consider there is a lot that we don't understand, and how exciting is it that we get to either stand in awe of those things that we don't understand or learn about them, which is hopefully kind of what you're doing right now with Hamlet. So after he says that magnificent line, Hamlet declares that he is going to pretend to be crazy. This has been the subject of so much discussion among the scholarly community around Hamlet. Why does he decide this as a first step? Is it to throw Claudius off? Is it to make him seem like less of a threat? Is it to buy himself some time? Is it that he actually has gone insane at this very moment, as he was warned could happen in the previous scene? We don't know. You can come up with your own theory there. If you do think of something that you think is absolutely correct, this is why he's insane, put it in the comments for me. Because I have played with a few different options, and it doesn't seem to me that there's one that is absolutely correct. But be that how it may, be that as it may, he says, "I shall perchance hereafter think it meet," again that means fitting, "to put an antic disposition on." So antic means crazy, mad, insane. I'm going to pretend to do this. If I were Horatio, I'd probably be thinking, yeah, pretend. That sounds about right. Pretend. And that brings us to the very end of the scene. Everybody swears that they will not tell anybody in the court or anybody that they know about what has happened, and Hamlet ends the scene with this idea. The time is out of joint, O cursed spite that ever I was born to set it right. It's a really famous line, and I think there's a reason. Hamlet takes the entire weight of the world on his shoulders and thinks that he is the only one who can put all of this right. Does he just need to grow up some more and realize that that is not the case? Or is that just his personality, that he feels the weight of all of this? In any case, he is really not the only one who could make a difference in this scenario, but he feels like he is. He feels like it's completely up to him to put things right in Denmark. So you'd think he'd start acting a little faster. All right, so that is it. If you have not already subscribed, make sure to subscribe to my channel for more Hamlet and English related videos. I hope you liked this. If you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you next week.